Okay, now we finished up on our practice swatch. We have our garter stitch, we have our stockinette, we have our rib, and then we have our seed stitch. Now, and then the last couple rows are kind of a little funny with the increases and decreases, but that's okay. What we want to do now is we want to end this. Now we can't just pull the needle out, because if we do this, everything's going to unravel. So we have to bind it off or cast it off. It's referred to both ways. So what we are going to do is we're going to knit the first stitch just like normal. The second stitch, let me get this figured out. There we go. Second stitch we're going to knit as well. Now we're going to take that first stitch and we're going to pick it up and we're going to pull it over that second stitch. Now that first stitch is bound off. It's not going to go anywhere. So I'm going to do that. My next stitch, I'm going to knit it, and then I'm going to take this loop, first stitch, and go right over it. Now there's 2 stitches off. And I'm going to continue doing this all the way across. Sometimes you might see a pattern that says bind off in pattern. And that comes to play in, say, if you did a sock or a cuff and you ended in 1 by 1 or a rib stitch. So what that would mean is when you come to a knit stitch, you knit it, and when you come to a purl stitch, you purl it. So if you were doing, say this was supposed to be bound off in pattern, I look and I see, okay, this is a purl stitch, so I'm going to purl it just like I normally would. Why is that kind of funny? Something was off there. Let's try this again. I'm going to purl it like I would normally, and then I'm going to take that first stitch and bring it over. So you don't need to do that. I'm just letting you know that that might be something that you find in a pattern. I think it's much easier just to knit them all the way across, but sometimes you need to do it a little bit differently. So I'm knitting each one of them and then taking that first stitch, popping it over the second, and moving all the way across the row. Can you tell that I normally don't knit English anymore? Just a little tidbit of info. But here we go. A few more stitches. Okay, we're getting close here. And then we'll bind off till we just have 1 loop left. 1 stitch on here. Okay. Now that we have 1 stitch left, and all the rest are bound off. They're not going to go anywhere. We are going to need to cut our yarn and go out a few inches. Now, when you have a natural fiber, say alpaca or wool, you'll be able to break it, meaning that you'll be able to hold it in your hands and just break the yarn. You can't really do that with acrylic yarn, so you'll need to use the scissors. So we cut that off, and we're going to make the loop bigger, pull that yarn through, and snug it up a little bit. Not real tight, but make sure it's on there. And you have bound off your piece. Now, these tails, we'll worry about finishing those in a little bit after, when we do our patterns. But for right now, you don't need to worry about that. Now, it looks a little different than this edge does, because remember how we increased and decreased? That's why it looks a little bit different. And also, we had, yeah, that increase and decrease makes it look funny, but that's okay. Now you've got a sample that has garter, stockinette, rib, and seed stitch. So this makes a very good reference. Now as we move forward, our next thing we're going to do in module 4, we're going to get into actually making a project. We're going to do fingerless mitts. So you'll need all these skills to do them. So I'm looking forward to getting started with that. And I'll see you in module 4.